Thank you for tuning in to Entertain the Geeky, your source for nerd news.
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to Nerd News. This is Jason with you as always. And wow, a lot of stuff to cover this week, but I'm going to start with the thing that has literally taken over the internet for the past couple of days. It's all over your Facebook feed, it's all over your YouTube feed. The Avengers Infinity War trailer has made its way onto the internet, giving us our first glimpse at this upcoming film and the culmination of the better part of a decade of stories that have been building to this final moment here. And I gotta say, it's glorious, and I could sit and go over every part of it with a fine-tooth comb, but I'm going to focus on just a couple of things that have stood out that I've noticed over some various other videos that I've checked out, and some various kind of looking through the trailer on my own and trying to deduce what's going on. The big one is the appearance of Thanos and popping up into the trailer. He's got the Infinity Gauntlet, he's got a couple of stones, the Space Stone, which is the Tesseract, and the Power Stone, which we saw last in Guardians of the Galaxy, being entrusted to the Nova Corps. Now, I would imagine that at some point, maybe probably even a prologue to the film, we will see Thanos, dealing with the Asgardians from the end of Thor Ragnarok, getting the Tesseract, and then transporting himself to Xandar, to the Nova Corps. And I think that's probably a really good way to see the kind of devastation that Thanos and his Black Order bring to the table before we actually see him go to Earth. So I think Xandar and the Nova Corps are about to get a huge wake-up call that they should never have taken possession of this stone. So that'll be an interesting thing, and I think there's at least a couple of scenes in the film that were probably, a couple of scenes in the trailer that are probably taking place on Xandar. But ultimately, back on Earth, the Black Order has kind of come and trying to locate the stones. And another big thing that comes out of the trailer is what appears to be some kind of big epic battle that takes place at Wakanda. Which definitely has an implication that the Wakandans are in possession of the last Infinity Stone, so the Soul Stone, which we have not seen in any film up to this point. We've seen every stone except the Soul Stone. And with Black Panther coming out right before Avengers Infinity War, it's a pretty good bet that they are in possession of that last Infinity Stone. I know there was some speculation that, Thor Ragnarok was going to introduce that stone to us, that somehow Heimdall was the Soul Stone because of the color of his eyes and the fact that he can see souls. Obviously, we passed over that without mentioning anything about it, so it's a good bet that the Wakandans are in possession of it, and probably have been in possession of it for generations, the same way the sorcerers have held the Time Stone for so long. And then the army we get to see fighting the Wakandans and some of the Avengers there on the big battlefield, and somewhere in Wakanda outside the city. Was a very interesting thing as well. If you're unfamiliar with what those aliens are, our best guess is that they are the Outriders. The Outriders are genetically engineered by Thanos and the Black Order to kind of send out into the universe and do his bidding. And in a way, they're kind of the Meeseeks of the Marvel Universe, because most of the time, once their task is complete, they are killed. But clearly he has mass-produced the Outriders and is using them as kind of the grunts in the Black Order's army. And if you're unfamiliar with the Black Order, originally it was 5 members. It looks like the movies are only going to introduce us to 4. So we have Corvus Glaive, who is the leader of the Black Order. We have Proxima Midnight, who is, at least in the comic world, she was his woman. She was his girlfriend, his concubine, however you want to word it. I'm not really sure. Their relationship was very strange, and they never really took the time to kind of elaborate on it too much in the comic world. They might do that in the movies, who knows. We have those two, and then we have the Ebony Maw. He's kind of the, if you were paying attention to the D23 reveals that were going on back, 5 or 6 months ago, he's kind of the weird white, wrinkly, he kind of looks old, he's got a big long robe on, and then the Black Dwarf, which was the big kind of giant guy. He was in the comic world the leader of the army that tried to take down Wakanda and get the Soul Stone. In the comic world, he failed quite spectacularly and was punished quite severely by Thanos. Whether or not that will make it into the movie is yet to be seen, but we definitely have some interesting stuff to look forward to with the Black Order and the Outriders. And I doubt we'll probably see the Outriders used to their fullest extent. In the comic world, they had powers like invisibility and tactile telekinesis, and they could read your minds, and they were reading the minds of various heroes trying to locate the stones for Thanos. In the comic world, when they found out that the Avengers were actually not on Earth, and Thanos used that as his time to attack. So how much of that comic actually gets translated, I would say probably not a lot, but they're definitely being inspired by what that comic did and how it was presented. I'm sure that at some point we'll see some Avengers in space. I mean, we already have Thor out in space with the Guardians of the Galaxy. Who knows? The end of the film might lead the Avengers into space. So I'd like to touch on one more thing that I think has kind of popped up that was a little interesting to me, in that we see the Hulkbuster armor on Wakanda, and we see Bruce Banner, but we only have one shot in the trailer of Hulk. And with Iron Man off with Doctor Strange and Spider-Man and the various others, there's been speculation that the person inside the Hulkbuster armor is actually not Tony Stark, but it is Bruce Banner. And you might think, well, why? Why do we need to put Bruce Banner in armor when he can just turn into a big monster? So the thought is, and let me take this with a grain of salt, because at this point we have no idea. We're just speculating. The thought is that something prevents him from turning into the Hulk, or that maybe the Hulk and Bruce Banner become separated, so they end up becoming two separate entities. By some doing of Thanos, maybe playing around with the souls, or playing around with the Infinity Stones. He does something that separates them or prevents Bruce from changing. Now, there is precedent within the comic world for Bruce and the Hulk being two separate entities. So there's not, it's not outside the realm of possibility that might be something that we end up getting with this film, which I think would be very interesting. But again, take it with a grain of salt. It's all just speculation at this point. We have no real idea what's going on. We are just looking at some context clues and trying to guess. So a couple more things that just really were interesting to me was finally getting to see Spider-Sense. He has this moment where you see Peter kind of sitting on a school bus, and the hair on his arm stands up. And they haven't really touched on Spider-Sense at all up to this point. And there was a little... Civil War had a little bit of context for it when Spider-Man kind of ducks out of the way without knowing that something was coming up behind him. So we know it's there, but they haven't really taken the time to elaborate on it or explain it to us in any way. It's just kind of, he's just always a little bit ahead. He's always kind of one step ahead in fights, which is fine. I'm absolutely fine with not, focusing in on it, because the other movies have already kind of, hammered that into the ground. And another thing that I really liked to see was seeing Captain America, full beard now, kind of nomad style, and the symbolism, the symbolism of America from his costume has been torn away. You can see where all of that symbolism was, but it's gone now, as if he's kind of turned his back on America because America turned its back on him. So just real interesting things, and I can't wait to see more footage, and definitely can't wait till May of next year to finally see the film. But if you haven't watched the trailer, what are you doing with your life? Go out, watch the trailer, check it out, because it is amazing, and there's plenty of reaction videos and breakdown videos and everything that you can watch till you're blue in the face. You could sit and watch videos about Infinity War, the movie. Moving on to the world of video games. So something that has popped up recently, aside from some other new releases like Super Mario Odyssey and things like that, we are coming up on, or we just passed actually, the 1 year anniversary of Final Fantasy 15. And I'm not the biggest fan of DLC, because I feel like, if you're going to release the game, you should release it complete. You should not release it incomplete and then charge me more money to complete it later. But I could go on a whole tangent about that, and I'm going to leave that for another time. But something that is popping up for an update for Final Fantasy 15 here a year out, as they are still dropping DLC and various other episodic things that kind of add a little bit to the game, is the ability to switch on the fly between characters. If you played the game, your main character is Noctis. He's the prince of some land. I don't remember the name of the land right now offhand. But he's accompanied by his three friends. It's kind of got a Stand By Me vibe in their relationship. They even used Stand By Me, the song, to kind of elaborate a little more on that. But this new update will allow you to switch between characters on the fly and play the main story as one of the side characters, whether that be Prompto or Gladio, or I can't really think of that other guy's name. It was Prompto and Gladio and somebody else. But it definitely seems like here a long time later we are still getting updates. We are still getting DLC content, and how you feel about that is up to you. But it'll be interesting to kind of, if you're a fan of the game, I know I am, to kind of go back through the story and see the focal point put on a different character, or just be able to run around the map in the open world as that character, or drive the car as that character, or whatever it may be. So, moving to the world of comics, if you are unfamiliar, the Doomsday Clock #1 has been released. It is a 12-issue series that is meant to serve as kind of something that ties together this Rebirth world and this kind of background story that Jeff Johns had started with the Rebirth one-shot. We are now coming around full circle to Doomsday Clock, and it's supposed to give us the answers and the revelations that we need. And if you're unfamiliar, it is actually being pegged as a sequel to Watchmen. One of the things that we had heard from Jeff Johns is, yes, there are preludes and there are things that you can read that will kind of get you, set up to understand what's going on in this story, but he has claimed really all you need is Watchmen. If you've read Watchmen, you're caught up and you know what's going on, and it's picking up right after that. And I gotta say, time has passed, but it definitely feels like something that is spinning right out of the pages of what that original series was. Which some people might find a little blasphemous. Some people might not really dig the idea that they're kind of trying to expand on a story that a lot of people think is perfect all on its own. But some notable differences come up right away. I mean, obviously, we get introduced to a Rorschach character within this first issue of the story. And if you've read Watchmen, you know that Rorschach, he died. He died quite terribly by being kind of ripped apart atom by Dr. Manhattan. And we find out very quickly that this Rorschach is not Walter Kovacs, who was the original Rorschach. This is someone else, a successor, or someone who's just trying to kind of carry on the legacy that Rorschach started. And there's been speculation about who that character is. Some people say it's the kid who was always reading the paper at the newsstand. Some people say it's some other characters that had popped up in the Watchmen comics, or even in the before Watchmen comics. I don't want to speculate at this point. I'm just happy to see that someone saw what Rorschach was doing and saw that it was good and decided to carry on with it. But it definitely, we're going to get into a little bit of spoilery territory here. So if you haven't read the book, I suggest going out, checking it out, and then coming back. But this book has taken place, I think, 7 years after the events of Watchmen. And we understand that Ozymandias is still around. He, obviously what he tried to do during the events of Watchmen was to create a unified world, to find a way to bring peace, and apparently that failed. That didn't work because the details of Rorschach's journal were published, and everything that was Ozymandias' plan was kind of laid out, which has now made Ozymandias a wanted man. There is all over the world. I mean, he's a wanted man in every corner of the globe. If anybody were to see him, they would arrest him on sight. And obviously, as you would expect, the U.S. and Russia are still not doing well. They're on the brink of war. It's kind of a very interesting tie-in to what Watchmen was and what it was trying to do, and just kind of picking up the pieces and going forward. I don't want to go into too many details because I really think you should go out and check out the book. But basically, Ozymandias is trying to find Dr. Manhattan, and he hires some people, including the new Rorschach, to kind of help track him down. And I know you're thinking to yourself, what does this have to do with DC Comics and any of those characters? Well, so we see just a small kind of tie-in to DC that is going to be obviously important moving forward. Clark Kent is sleeping and he's having some kind of, I guess, nightmare dream about his parents, reliving the night that they died. Lois kind of wakes him up, and he kind of thinks to himself that he's never had a nightmare before. So this is a kind of a weird occurrence for Superman. So obviously there's some kind of outside force acting on what's going on in his head. And that's really it. I mean, they leave this book very open. I mean, this is just number 1. It's a 12-issue series that is coming. So it'll be very interesting to see where they go from here. And obviously we will keep you posted and talking about what's going on. We're very excited as fans to find out what's happening. And we will definitely bring any new information as it comes to you. Lastly, I'd like to touch on something that I just find very interesting. A while back, we had heard that Disney was in talks with Fox to buy their studio, which is a very interesting prospect for a lot of reasons. Most notably because, well, Fox owns the X-Men and the Fantastic Four franchises. And it would be kind of awesome if we're going into Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we can rejoin those things. We can have Reed Richards and Wolverine, joining up with whoever's left over after the events of Infinity War. So a while back they were kind of talking about that, but then some things happened and they kind of put those talks on hold. But it appears as though they are back sitting together trying to figure out some kind of way to move forward with this. Now, why Fox would want to get rid of, or would want to sell their studio when they've got some interesting things coming down the pipeline that are sure to make them a lot of money, like Deadpool 2. New Mutants looks very interesting as kind of a horror movie with mutants in it. And even X-Men Dark Phoenix, we have not seen any footage of, and we don't really know what direction they're trying to take that. So that could be a very interesting film to see as well. I'm not really sure why this is something that they would want to do, but as a fan of comics and as a fan of the MCU, I would definitely think that Phase 4 could be an introduction of the X-Men and the Fantastic Four to this world. We could lead towards some kind of Avengers versus X-Men story, and that would be pretty awesome. I have to say, I would really be surprised if they acquired this and that's not what they built to. Because when you introduce these characters into a world in the aftermath of all of these things that have already happened, there definitely is going to be questions about how they fit, where they belong, are they Avengers? There's a lot of things that need to be answered, and if Marvel were to acquire, or if Disney, I guess, were to acquire 20th Century Fox, we could finally have some answers to these things. And I'm going to be honest, the one thing that I really want to see out of an acquisition like this is a good Fantastic Four film. I don't even care if it's ever tied in with the MCU. I loved the Fantastic Four when I was a kid. One of the things that was always really cool about that book was, yes, it was a sci-fi thing. It had a big, grand story, heroes and fighting monsters. But at the core of what it was a book about a family. And I think that worked really well in a comic form. And it even kind of worked in those movies, those original Fantastic Four movies that they tried to make way back, with Jessica Alba and Chris Evans and the various other people. I think that they got that right. I think that they presented it as a story about a family, which I think was fun. There was a lot of things that were wrong with those films, most notably like Doctor Doom and Galactus. Doctor Doom being kind of relegated to just an egomaniac, and Galactus being relegated to just being a big cloud that was kind of shaped like Galactus. I don't know, it was bad, but it would definitely be nice to see the Fantastic Four taken seriously, and look what they've done with Spider-Man. Look what they've done with all of these characters. Even though these were the kind of characters that didn't have movies before, and we introduced them through their films. Look what they've done with them. Look how well the characters have been taken care of. Look how the source material has been regarded with reverence. I want that to happen to the Fantastic Four. I would like to see a good Fantastic Four movie that really kind of breaks the mold that we've established of just bad Fantastic Four movies. But that's going to bring me to the end of what I have for this week. Thank you for sitting in and listening. So I definitely have some new stuff to talk about. Check out entertainthegeeky.com for all the links to Facebook. We also have some merchandise with some t-shirts with some of the logos and things on it, so check that out. We have set up a private email for the Nerd News Show, so if you want to get in touch with me, if you want to talk, you want to hear certain things on the show that we just haven't touched on yet, it's etgnerdnews@gmail.com. That's etgnerdnews, all one word, at gmail.com. So if you're interested, hit me up. Let me know what you think of the show. Let me know what you want to hear. And like I said, check out the merch, check out the games at the website. Leave us a comment on Facebook or Twitter. We're always happy to hear from you guys. We will see you next time, and until then, stay geeky.